Imagine it's the spring of 1974. You're not an archaeologist. You're not looking for treasure. You're just a farmer in a village in Shaanxi, China, and the only thing you're trying to dig up is water. The ground is dry. The crops need irrigation. You and your brothers are sinking a new well on some scrubby wasteland outside the village. The first meter is just dust and rock. The second meter is more of the same. Then, around 3 meters down, your shovel hits something that sounds wrong, hollow, hard, not rock. You scrape away the soil expecting a jar, a stone, a root. Instead, you uncover a life-size human face, staring back at you from the earth. You haven't just hit a buried statue, you've hit the edge of one of the greatest archaeological treasures in human history. This is the story of the Terracotta Army, the treasure found by accident that changed everything we thought we knew about ancient China. Our story starts in Xi'an village, Lintong district, about 40 kilometers east of Xi'an in the province of Shaanxi. In March 1974, the village was suffering from drought. To save their crops, the villagers decided to dig a new well on a stretch of unused land near a persimmon grove. One of those villagers was Yang Jifa, accompanied by his brothers and neighbors like Yang Kuanyi. They were not treasure hunters. They weren't following rumors or legends. They were just digging. Reports say that when they reached a depth of about 3 meters, they found a layer of charcoal and unusually red soil. They kept going. At 4 meters, Yang's shovel struck something solid that wasn't stone. When he pulled it free, he was holding a life-sized pottery head. The villagers allegedly called it a pottery god at first, unsure what they were dealing with. They kept digging and started finding more fragments. Broken torsos and limbs made of fired clay, pieces of figures wearing armor, bronze arrowheads, and crossbow parts. To most of the village, it was strange, maybe unlucky, maybe interesting. To the local cultural authorities, once they were alerted, it was something else entirely. Within days, someone made a decision that would change the fate of that wasteland forever. Stop digging for water, start digging for history. Word of the find reached local cultural officials who in turn notified archaeologists in Xi'an. One of the key early experts to see the fragments was Zhao Kangmin, an archaeologist at the Lintong County Museum who began restoring the pieces and realizing their significance. By mid-July 1974, an official archaeological team, jointly formed by the Shaanxi Provincial Museum, the Cultural Relics Management Committee, and the Lintong County Cultural Center, arrived at the site. They started formal excavations around the broken figures and soon realized 3 things. The fragments weren't isolated, they belonged to a vast, organized layout. The figures were life-sized and armed, not random statues. The site lay about 1.5 kilometers east of the known mound of the mausoleum of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. What began as a well shaft widened into what we now call Pit, one of the Terracotta Army. As they cleared more earth, the scale became impossible to ignore. Row after row of terracotta soldiers appeared, standing in battle formation. Horses and wooden chariots, now rotted but once present, had been positioned among them. Weapons such as bronze spears, swords, and arrowheads were found alongside the figures. By July 15th, trial excavations were in full swing. In the years that followed, more pits would be found. But even in 1974, it was already obvious. This wasn't just a small burial. This was a buried army. And the world had never seen anything like it. What exactly did they find? The Terracotta Army is part of the massive funerary complex built for Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, who died in 210 to 209 BCE. His mausoleum mound at Mount Li had been known since ancient times, but no one suspected that an entire army lay quietly to the east. The accidental find in 1974 revealed Pit 1, the largest, about 230 meters long and 62 meters wide, containing several thousand infantry figures arranged in battle formation, facing east. Pit 2, a more complex array including cavalry, archers, chariots, and mixed units. And Pit 3, smaller, interpreted as a kind of command post with officers and a chariot. Estimates vary, but archaeologists generally state that the full army likely includes over 8,000 soldiers, plus hundreds of horses and chariots, though not all have been excavated. Each figure is about 1.8 to 2 meters tall, with height and armor style indicating rank. One of the most striking details: no 2 faces are exactly alike. The sculptors crafted individualized features, hair, facial structure, expressions, so the army doesn't look stamped from a mold. The weapons were real: bronze swords with anti-corrosion treatments, arrowheads mass-produced but precisely made, and long spears and halberds that would have been lethal in actual combat. This was not cheap funerary art. This was a massive state project, executed with the same kind of logistical obsession Qin Shi Huang used to build roads, standardize scripts, and start the Great Wall. The discovery didn't just add some statues to a museum. It opened a physical doorway into how the first emperor thought about power, death, and the afterlife. Before 1974, historians knew Qin Shi Huang as the unifier of China. He ended the Warring States period and founded the Qin dynasty in 221 BCE. He standardized weights, measures, currency, and the written script across his empire. He launched massive construction projects, including early versions of what would become the Great Wall system. Ancient texts like Sima Qian's Records of the Grand Historian described his mausoleum as a marvel with rivers of mercury and mechanical traps. But much of that felt like legend. The Terracotta Army turned legend into landscape. It showed that Qin's concern with security extended into death. He wanted a literal army to protect him in the afterlife. The state could mobilize enormous resources and skilled labor purely for funerary purposes. And the level of detail in armor types, ranks, and unit organization offered concrete evidence about Qin military structure that texts alone could not. Archaeologists believe work on the mausoleum complex began soon after Qin took the throne of Qin state at age 13, decades before unification, and continued for around 38 years. The workforce is said to have included hundreds of thousands of laborers and craftspeople. The treasure discovered by the farmers was not just valuable in gold or artifacts. It was valuable because it reopened a conversation about what a state is willing to build for one person and how that scale of ambition can reshape a landscape. Once the significance of the accidental find was clear, China moved quickly to protect and present it. After several years of excavation and conservation, the Museum of Qin Terracotta Warriors and Horses was officially opened to the public on October 1, 1979. It sits directly over the pits, turning the original archaeological site into a massive, climate-controlled exhibition hall. Travel China Guide notes that the original well location dug by the farmers now marks the eastern edge of Pit 1. There's still a marker for the well on site. From a village-level perspective, the find transformed the area. Xi'an village, once ordinary farmland, became part of a global heritage site. Tourism surged. Xi'an became internationally known not just for its ancient city walls, but as the gateway to the Terracotta Army. The farmers themselves, especially young Jifa, became minor historical figures, occasionally meeting visitors and being interviewed about the day their shovel hit that first head. What started as a drought problem became a museum, visited by millions of people, a UNESCO-level cultural symbol, and one of the world's most famous archaeological sites. One swing of a shovel had changed not only the story we tell about Qin Shi Huang, it also changed the story those villagers told about their own land. The Terracotta Army is often called the eighth wonder of the world. That's not just marketing. Its discovery rewired multiple fields at once. Before the excavation, much of what we knew about Qin military organization came from texts and scattered artifacts. The pits provided evidence of unit structure, infantry fronts, supporting ranks, flanking chariots, distinct armor and headgear variations that helped identify ranks and specialties, and real weapons in situ, some still sharp and chemically treated. It's like going from reading about an army to walking through its parade ground. The figures showed a blend of standardization and individual artistry. Studies of the statues reveal that bodies were likely assembled from modular parts, legs, torsos, arms, produced in workshops, then customized with unique heads and surface details. This supports the idea of a highly organized production line centuries before modern assembly, framed within an imperial system that could coordinate massive projects. The scale of the complex around Qin's mausoleum, including the Terracotta Army, forced historians to reevaluate what an imperial tomb could be. Not a single chamber, but an entire underground city and military zone. Not just symbolic offerings, but thousands of full-scale guardians. It also reignited debates about whether to excavate the main tomb mound itself, which many Chinese experts have opposed until technology can ensure safe preservation of whatever lies inside. In other words, the treasure found by accident opened a door. then forced us to admit we're not ready to open the next one. It's easy looking back to treat the Terracotta Army as inevitable, as if someone was always going to find it. But think about how fragile this chain of events really was. If the drought hadn't been severe in 1974, the well might have been dug somewhere else. If the villagers had stopped digging when they hit the first fragments, or thrown them aside as junk, the site could have been damaged beyond repair. If local authorities had ignored the report, the shards might have been scattered, sold, or repurposed long before archaeologists arrived. Instead, everything lined up: a drought, a well, a farmer with a shovel, a pottery head in red soil, then an archaeologist who recognized what he was looking at, then a government willing to fund excavation and build a museum. All of that turned one mistaken strike into a cultural event that reshaped how millions of people imagine ancient China. The treasure that changed everything wasn't gold or jewels. It was information, a three-dimensional archive of a state that once believed its first emperor was important enough to command an army in death. In 1974, a group of farmers in Xi'an village set out to find water, and instead found 8,000 silent soldiers who had been waiting underground for more than 2,000 years. That single accidental discovery turned a field into a World Heritage-level museum, a semi-legendary emperor into a figure we could stand face-to-face with through his clay army, and a local drought into a global story about how fragile our connection to the past really is. Some treasures are hunted for, some are stolen, and some are lying just a few meters under your feet, waiting for the wrong person to dig the right hole. If you could choose one lost site to stumble on by accident, a buried city, a forgotten tomb, or an unknown cave, what would you hope your shovel hits first?